Good evening, I'm Marcel, and this is Inside News Special DRC, broadcasting on Saturday, October 11th, 2025. While mainstream media focuses on the familiar narratives, we examine the stories that shape nations yet receive insufficient international attention. Tonight, we turn our focus to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where diplomatic initiatives collide with ground realities and where economic progress exists alongside humanitarian crisis. We begin with a diplomatic rupture that threatens to derail regional peace efforts. On October 9th in Brussels, President Félix Tshisekedi made a direct appeal to his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame during the Global Gateway Forum. Tshisekedi called on Kagame to demonstrate the courage to work together toward peace in eastern DRC. The response from Kigali was immediate and scathing. Rwanda's Foreign Minister, Olivier Nungarehe, dismissed the initiative as ridiculous political theater, accusing Tshisekedi of hijacking a cooperation forum to make accusations. President Kagame himself responded on social media, stating that those worried about the noise of an empty barrel also have a problem. This exchange reveals fundamental obstacles to peace. American officials, including Masad Boulos, senior advisor for Africa to President Trump, praised Tshisekedi's gesture as noble and announced that Doha negotiations would resume next week after suspension following the September 11th attack in Qatar. Yet Rwanda's rejection exposes the fragility of both the Washington Peace Accord signed in June and the Doha Declaration of Principles from July. The Congolese government, through spokesman Patrick Muyaya on October 8th, established clear conditions. No regional economic agreements will be signed until Rwandan troops withdraw from Congolese territory. This position explains why Kinshasa refused to sign the Regional Economic Integration Framework in Washington. The international community has responded with statements and funding, though enforcement remains absent. The UN Human Rights Council adopted 2 resolutions on October 7th and 8th during its 60th session in Geneva. These resolutions condemn foreign military support to the M23 rebel group, specifically naming Rwanda, and demand immediate cessation of this support, plus unconditional withdrawal of Rwandan forces from Congolese territory. The resolutions call on the facilitators of the Washington Peace Accord and Doha Declaration, the United States and Qatar, to pressure all parties to honor their commitments. They also demand safe humanitarian access to North and South Kivu provinces, including reopening the airports in Goma and Bukavu. European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced €180 million in new funding for 4 sectors in DRC: energy, transport, biodiversity, and sustainable mining. This brings total EU aid to over €272 million since early 2023, complemented by €60 million in humanitarian assistance announced in January 2025 for displaced populations. The African Union praised the July Doha Declaration as significant progress, yet maintains careful neutrality to avoid taking sides in regional divisions. In July, the AU assumed control of all peace processes concerning Eastern DRC, strengthening its role as primary mediator. On the ground, violence continues despite diplomatic efforts. Between September 28th and October 8th, intense combat between M23 AFC rebels and Congolese armed forces in the Bwito and Bahunde chiefdoms of Rutshuru and Masisi territories resulted in at least 4 deaths, 13 disappearances, and 8 women raped. Dozens of homes burned, including Nyabateja Primary School, while the Muliki Health Center was pillaged. Fresh clashes erupted on October 6th between M23 AFC and Wazalendo fighters in Masisi territory, spreading from Gululu village to Makeno village, and triggering new population displacements toward Walikale. There are limited positive signals. At Walikale, Wazalendo forces dislodged M23 AFC rebels from 4 of 5 positions at Kibati after fierce fighting on October 9th, though combat resumed the following morning. Additionally, 29 M23 elements surrendered to Congolese forces, while 3 others were captured on front lines. The displaced population's flow continues toward villages including Bambo, Kabizo, Butare, and Gungu Town. The most affected groupings are Bukambo, Tongo, Bambo, Mutanda, and Kihondo in Bwito Chiefdom, along with Ufamandu 1 in Bahunde Chiefdom. Against this security backdrop, DRC's economy shows resilience. On October 7th, the Central Bank of Congo reduced its key rate from 25% to 17.5%. A major decision aimed at encouraging economic operators to conduct transactions in national currency. This measure follows demonstrated economic stability during the third quarter of 2025. The Congolese franc appreciated significantly, 11.6% on the official market and 7.8% on the parallel market by September 30th, establishing at 2,548.80 CDS per US dollar on the interbank market and 2,659.28 CDF on the parallel market. Since September 19th, the franc has appreciated 9.1% on the interbank market, resulting from coordinated monetary and fiscal policy implementation. Annual inflation reached 7.8% at end September, continuing its downward trend from 15.1% during the same period in 2024. These economic advances align with 6 commitments made by President Tshisekedi upon his re-election, particularly improving Congolese population purchasing power. At the 61st Council of Ministers meeting on October 3rd, Tshisekedi commended the government and central bank for the franc's appreciation, instructing them to curb speculation and emphasizing proper regulation of security expenditures. The human cost remains severe. A September 2025 study by the International Committee of the Red Cross examining 240 health centers reveals alarming degradation of the healthcare system in the Kivu region. Health infrastructure suffers grave damage from conflict-related destruction, notably hospitals destroyed by M23 and Rwandan forces. Médecins Sans Frontières concluded its emergency cholera intervention in October after 3 months of operations in eastern DRC. Cholera remains a major public health problem, particularly during the first semester of 2025, amid vaccine shortages and reduced humanitarian financing. The healthcare crisis compounds security displacement. Communities flee combat zones with minimal resources, overwhelming reception areas that lack adequate infrastructure. The systematic destruction of civilian facilities, schools, health centers, homes, demonstrates patterns documented by human rights organizations. What emerges is a striking contradiction. International institutions unanimously support Congolese sovereignty, condemn Rwandan aggression, and pass resolutions demanding troop withdrawal. The EU commits substantial funding. The UN Human Rights Council adopts strong language. Yet Rwanda rejects dialogue with impunity, maintains its military presence, and suffers no effective consequences. This reveals the gap between diplomatic declarations and enforcement mechanisms. The Washington Accord and Doha Declaration contain specific timelines. The Joint Security Coordination Mechanism agreed on September 17th to 18th in Washington to launch operations against FDLR on October 1st, with Rwandan troop withdrawal scheduled between October 21st to 31st. We are now past the first deadline with no visible implementation. Meanwhile, DRC demonstrates economic management capacity despite the conflict, achieving currency stability and inflation reduction that many peaceful nations struggle to accomplish. This fiscal discipline strengthens Kinshasa's position that peace must precede economic integration, a logical stance given that signing trade agreements with an occupying force you'd legitimize the occupation. The sixth round of negotiations between the Congolese government and M23/AFC is scheduled for next week, with participation from key international partners, including the United States, European Union, and African Union. Whether these talks can bridge the diplomatic impasse remains uncertain, particularly after Kigali's harsh rejection of Tshisekedi's Brussels initiative. Within Congo, reactions to Tshisekedi's overture are mixed. While applauded at the forum and praised by international partners, opposition figures view it as weakness. A president whose territory is partially occupied, lacking strategies to impose Congo's position and restore state authority in the east. Archbishop Dodo Kamba offered a more positive assessment, seeing it as an attempt at constructive dialogue despite Rwandan rejection. Tonight we've examined a crisis where diplomatic momentum faces military reality, where economic achievement coexists with humanitarian catastrophe, and where international consensus fails to produce tangible change. The situation in eastern DRC continues because the cost of aggression remains lower than the cost of peace, for some actors at least. These are the stories that demand attention beyond the news cycle's rotation. This is why Inside News exists, to maintain focus on the crises that shape our world, regardless of their media visibility. Thank you for watching. Good journey to all.